At only 7 years old, Azima's life took a tragic turn. She was once surrounded by the joy of a loving home, where the warmth of her family filled the air, and the sweet taste of mangoes from her backyard tree was all she needed to feel content. But everything changed when her stepmother's greed tore her world apart. Betrayed and abandoned, Azima found herself alone on the unforgiving streets of Mwitu City. The security and comfort she once knew vanished in an instant. With nothing left but the clothes on her back, Azima's small hands, which once held mangoes with laughter, now trembled as she clutched a begging tin, hoping for a few coins from strangers passing by. The city's cold indifference crushed her spirit as she stood on the roadside, feeling the weight of a broken world bearing down on her tiny shoulders. Azima had never seen a place so loud, so fast, and so heartless. Mwitu City moved like a machine. Cars flew past her without slowing down, and people walked by like shadows, never seeing the small girl standing near the roadside. No one cared why she was there, barefoot, alone, and shaking. The noise of the traffic was deafening, but even louder was the silence she received from everyone who passed her. Her presence felt invisible. No one asked her name. No one offered help. The crowd moved like a wave, cold and constant, swallowing her cries. The first day, Azima cried until there were no tears left. Her sobs were loud at first, then soft, and finally silent. She didn't understand how everything had changed so fast. Her tiny stomach screamed from hunger, and her feet ached from walking for hours with no place to go. That night, she slept curled up beside a wall, using a piece of cardboard as a blanket. Her little body shivered as the wind cut through her thin clothes. She held her knees close to her chest, wishing someone, anyone, would see her. The next day was even harder. Azima stood near a shop, holding a small tin, hoping someone would drop a coin. Her voice was weak and shaky as she whispered for help, but people didn't stop. They walked faster, looked away, or sometimes just stared with cold eyes. Some even frowned as if she had done something wrong just by standing there. Every no felt like a slap. Every ignored plea sank her deeper into hopelessness. By evening, her voice had cracked, too tired to beg anymore. Her hands trembled as she held the empty tin. By the third day, something inside her changed. Her tears had dried up. Her voice was still hoarse, but she began to understand something. No one was going to rescue her. If she wanted to survive, she had to learn quickly. So, she forced a smile, even though her heart was heavy. She whispered politely to strangers, even when they didn't answer. Her eyes stopped searching for kindness. They became blank, quiet, watching the crowd without expecting anything back. Her body moved, her lips spoke, but her spirit hid behind a wall she built inside herself. She started noticing little things, where people were more likely to give coins, which food stalls threw away leftovers, which corners had shelter from the wind. She learned to read people's faces, guessing who might stop and who wouldn't. Her world had shrunk to survival. Morning meant finding food. Noon meant hiding from boys who stole from smaller kids like her. Evening meant finding a dry place to sleep. She began to listen not just to voices, but to footsteps, alarms, vendors yelling, and even the sound of rain hitting metal sheets. Each hour taught her something new. She was just a child, but the roads became her teacher. She no longer dreamed of toys or games. She only thought about warmth, food, and safety. But deep inside, a tiny part of her still remembered who she used to be. The girl who used to run through mango trees barefoot. The girl who once laughed loudly and hugged her father tightly. That memory flickered like a small candle, even as the cold wind of rejection tried to blow it out. Azima had become part of the background. To others, she was just another face they passed by. But every day, she was learning. Slowly, painfully, she was becoming stronger. Not because she wanted to, but because she had no other choice. The roads had taken everything from her. Now, they were shaping her into something new. Every day in Azima's life started the same way, with an empty stomach and tired eyes. She woke up as the city's noise began to rise, the sound of honking cars and loud vendors echoing through the air. Her first task was simple: survive another day. She would walk along the edge of the road, heading toward the train tracks where food stalls dumped leftovers. She wasn't looking for anything fresh, just a piece of stale bread or bruised fruit that no one else wanted. Sometimes, if she was lucky, she would find something half-eaten that hadn't spoiled completely. She ate quickly, always watching her back, because hunger made people desperate, and desperate people could be dangerous. By afternoon, the roads became more dangerous, not because of cars, but because of gangs. Older kids and men who saw the younger ones like Azima as easy targets. They would snatch whatever food or coin she had collected, and sometimes more. She learned to disappear in plain sight. She memorized alleyways, quiet corners, and abandoned buildings where she could hide until the danger passed. Some days she didn't beg at all, just hid and waited, stomach growling because safety meant more than food. The evenings were colder, both in temperature and in feeling. The roads emptied of their crowds, and the city lights flickered on. Azima didn't have a blanket. She didn't have a bed. Her home was under a broken overpass with other children like her, each one clutching scraps of plastic or cardboard, trying to keep warm. The cement was hard, the wind was sharp, and sleep never came easy. She would curl into herself, hugging her knees, trying to protect her small body from the night. The sound of the wind mixed with the distant roar of traffic became her lullaby. When it rained, things got worse. The roads turned into rivers of mud and trash. Azima would run to the garbage heaps beside the road, digging through the filth to find plastic sheets or torn sacks she could wrap around herself. The rain didn't just soak her skin, it soaked her bones. Everything she owned, every piece of paper or food she had saved, was ruined. The cold made her teeth chatter, and her body would shake uncontrollably. There were nights she thought she wouldn't wake up again, but somehow she always did. Hunger was always there. It never left her side. It was a quiet whisper in the morning and a loud scream by night. It followed her through every moment, when she begged, when she hid, when she cried, and even when she pretended to be strong. She could feel it in her legs when they struggled to stand, in her arms when she lifted the begging tin, and in her chest when she tried to breathe through the pain. Hunger wasn't just physical, it ate away at her spirit too. It made her question if she was even alive or just surviving. The roads didn't offer comfort, only lessons. She learned to read faces. She knew who might give her a coin and who might curse at her. She could tell which corner brought a little hope and which one brought danger. Her days moved like clockwork, a cycle of chasing scraps, dodging threats and fighting the chill of loneliness. Every second mattered. Every step had meaning. There was no time for dreams, no space for rest. Her world was built on survival, hour by hour. And yet she didn't break. She bent, she bled, she cried, but she kept moving. The roads tested her every single day, but she met them with quiet strength. Each bruise, each scar, each empty night was proof that she was still standing. Her body grew thin, her clothes hung in rags, but her eyes began to hold something new, a silent fire that refused to go out. This was Azima's life, not a story told to scare children, but a real, breathing fight against everything that tried to crush her. She had nothing, but she still had herself, and that was enough to keep going. In the middle of all the dirt, hunger, and sadness, Azima held on to something most people couldn't see, a quiet, strange hope. While others saw just another poor girl sitting near the road, Azima carried a world inside her that no one could take away. Her hands, rough and tired from begging and digging through trash, still remembered the softness of dreams. She didn't have toys, books, or even proper paper, but one day she found a small piece of broken charcoal near a burned trash pile, and with that everything began to change. She didn't know why she picked it up at first. Maybe it was just curiosity, or maybe it was something deeper calling out to her. A crumpled newspaper lay nearby, already stepped on and dirty, but it became her canvas. Azima sat on the cracked pavement, the noise of the city behind her, and began to draw. The lines were shaky at first, but slowly they formed shapes. Long flowing gowns, bold patterns, sharp heels, sparkling crowns. Her dresses were wild and beautiful, full of colour in her mind, even if they were just black lines on grey paper. People walked past her, not noticing what she was doing. They saw a ragged girl scribbling on trash and looked away. But Azima wasn't drawing for them. She wasn't trying to impress anyone. She was creating something real for herself, something that reminded her that she was more than just a beggar. She imagined her name stitched on fabric, people clapping as her dresses walked down shiny runways. In her head, the roads weren't her prison anymore. They were her stage. Every time she drew, it felt like magic. Her empty stomach stopped hurting for a while. The cold wind didn't bother her as much. Her fingers moved fast, sketching ideas that came from deep inside. Some days she drew while hiding from the gangs, curled behind old boxes. Other times she sat right in the open, letting her dreams spill onto paper as the city buzzed around her. She didn't care if her clothes were torn or her hair was messy. In her world, she wore the most beautiful dresses anyone had ever seen. Drawing became her secret power. It didn't give her food or shelter, but it gave her something more important, a reason to keep going. It reminded her of the girl she used to be, the one who used to spin in circles in her father's shirt, pretending it was a gown, the one who loved colours, fabric, and beauty. That girl wasn't gone. She was still there, waiting, growing, getting stronger with every sketch Azima made. Other children laughed at her sometimes. They didn't understand why she wasted time drawing when there was no food. But Azima didn't stop. She held her charcoal tight, protecting it like treasure. Each new line on the newspaper felt like a promise she made to herself. "One day, I'll make these real," she whispered quietly, too low for anyone else to hear. "One day, the world will see." Even when the papers were gone, she drew on walls, on cardboard, even in the dust. Her imagination had no limits. She began to notice things that others missed: the flow of cloth hanging outside shops, the way colours mixed on a vendor's umbrella, the stitching on a rich woman's dress who passed her by without looking. Azima studied everything. Her eyes became sharp. Her mind became full. She was learning without school, training herself without knowing it. To the world, she remained invisible, just another forgotten child on the side of the road. But inside, she was becoming someone powerful, a queen in rags, designing her future crown with nothing but broken charcoal and a dream that refused to die. No one saw it then. No one clapped or praised her. But Azima didn't need their approval. She saw herself. She believed in herself. And that belief, small and quiet as it was, became the fire that kept her alive. At night, when the city lights faded and the roads emptied, Azima found herself alone with her thoughts and the stars above. The world was quiet, but not peaceful. The silence was filled with sirens, barking dogs, and distant arguments. Yet in those moments, lying on the cold concrete, her stomach aching and her body curled tight against the night wind, she would look up. The stars became her only friends, the only ones who listened when no one else cared. Her little body, weak from days of hunger, would often feel like it couldn't go on. Her lips were dry, her fingers numb, and her breath shaky. But she had something stronger than food, something deeper than warmth. She had words, and she gave them to the stars. Every night, in the softest voice, Azima whispered dreams no one else had time to hear. "One day," she would say, barely louder than the breeze, "I'll never beg again. One day, I'll own these roads." It wasn't just a wish. It was a promise she made to herself when no one else believed in her, a vow she repeated when her stomach cried louder than her voice. She didn't know how it would happen, or when, but her heart refused to stop believing. Even when her fingers shook from the cold, or her eyes closed from exhaustion, she whispered that same line to the sky. The stars, distant and cold, seemed to shine a little brighter every time. The roads were cruel during the day. They burned under the sun and froze at night. They saw her pain, but offered no comfort. But in the darkness, when no one was rushing past her or ignoring her voice, Azima found space to dream. The sirens still screamed in the background, reminders of how dangerous the world could be. But her whispers floated higher, as if trying to reach a place beyond the chaos. Some nights, the clouds would cover the sky, and the stars would disappear. Those were the hardest nights. The darkness felt heavier, and the cold bit deeper. On those nights, Azima would hold herself tighter, pressing her hands against her chest, as if trying to keep her heart from giving up. But even then, her voice would rise, barely audible, still whispering, still hoping. One day, it became her routine, her ritual. While others slept or wandered, she talked to the sky. She shared her secret plans, her dress design, her thoughts about the future. "I'll open my own shop," she whispered, "with lights, music, and people who smile." She described the dresses she would make, how they would shine and flow, and how her name, Azima, would be stitched into every tag. It didn't matter that she had no money, no tools, no place to start. Her dreams didn't need space. They only needed belief. The nights didn't get easier. but her spirit grew stronger. With each whisper, she built something inside herself, something unbreakable. Her body was small, her clothes were thin, but her soul was loud, louder than the sirens, louder than the hunger, louder than the silence. She carried her dreams like armor, invisible but powerful. She didn't tell anyone what she whispered to the stars, not the other kids on the roads, not the strangers who passed her by. Those dreams were hers alone, sacred and secret. In a world that gave her nothing, her dreams gave her everything. They gave her warmth on the coldest nights. They gave her strength when her legs wanted to collapse. They gave her hope when nothing else did. And maybe, just maybe, something out there heard her. Maybe destiny, hiding behind the stars, listened to the tiny voice of a girl no one else saw. Because sometimes the smallest voices carry the biggest power. Azima's whispers weren't lost in the dark. They were waiting, planting seeds in the sky, seeds of something big, something beautiful. She didn't know it yet, but those whispers were guiding her. They were pulling her forward, step by step, breath by breath, until the day her promise would come true. One day, she would no longer beg. One day, she would walk those same roads, not with a tin in her hand, but with purpose in her eyes, and the stars she whispered to would shine just for her. The rain was falling hard that day, turning the roads into rivers of mud. People rushed past, holding bags over their heads, stepping around puddles, not stopping for anything. Azima sat under a small tin roof near a closed fruit stall, her clothes soaked, her toes numb, but she didn't care. She had found a dry scrap of cardboard and still had a piece of charcoal hidden safely in her pocket. As the storm raged, she drew. Her fingers were stiff, her stomach empty, but her mind was full of color. On that piece of cardboard, she created a gown, long, flowing, sharp at the shoulders, delicate at the waist. She imagined it shining on a stage. She didn't notice the woman watching her. Mama Tano had been walking by, holding an old black umbrella that barely kept the rain off her. She had seen beggars before, thousands in her long life. But this girl was different. She wasn't asking for food or money. She was drawing, focused, intense. The kind of focus that doesn't come from games or boredom, but from something deeper, something born of pain and purpose. Mama Tano stopped, standing a few feet away, letting her eyes follow the lines on the cardboard. She saw skill, but more than that, she saw hunger. Not just for food, but for a life bigger than the one Azima had. Azima looked up, her heart jumping. Strangers never stopped unless they were going to yell or throw a coin. But this woman didn't speak right away. She just looked, really looked, at Azima's sketch. Then she knelt down, ignoring the wet ground. "Who taught you this?" she asked gently. Azima blinked, unsure whether to answer. "No one," she whispered. Mama Tano nodded, then smiled. "That's what I thought." It was the first kind face Azima had seen in years, a kind that didn't come with conditions or pity. Mama Tano didn't ask where her parents were or why she was out in the rain. She didn't ask her to move or beg her to stop. She just said, "Come with me, just for a while. Let's get you warm." Azima hesitated. She had learned not to trust anyone, but something about this woman's eyes, steady, warm, honest, made her stand up and follow. They walked through the rain in silence, Mama Tano holding the umbrella low to cover Azima as much as possible. She led her to a small tailor shop tucked between old buildings, its sign faded by years of weather. Upstairs was a dusty little room with a soft blanket, dry clothes, and warm porridge. Azima didn't ask questions. She ate, wrapped herself in the blanket, and watched the rain from the window. Mama Tano didn't ask much that night. She just brought out a basket of fabrics and handed Azima a small sketchbook and pencil. "Let's see what else lives in your mind," she said with a gentle smile. Azima's hands shook as she took the pencil. It felt too good to be true, but she drew anyway. Dresses, shoes, patterns. She filled pages with the life she had only dreamed of. Mama Tano watched every line, and with each one, she became more certain. To the world, Azima was a street child with nothing to offer. But Mama Tano saw beyond the dirt and silence. She saw a girl with raw fire inside her, a diamond not yet polished. For the first time, Azima wasn't invisible. Someone saw her, someone believed in her, and that small, simple moment became the first step in changing her life forever. Azima's new life began in a small, forgotten room above Mama Tano's old fabric shop. The space was dusty, filled with rolls of unused cloth and faded paper patterns. But to Azima, it felt like a palace. There was no bed, just a mattress on the floor, and a single window that let in soft golden light during the day. But it was dry, warm, and safe. 3 things she hadn't felt in years. Every morning, the hum of sewing machines echoed from the shop downstairs, mixing with the soft voice of Mama Tano giving instructions to her assistants. And for the first time, Azima had a reason to wake up. Mama Tano didn't treat her like a charity case. She gave her tasks. Small ones at first, like folding fabric, sweeping the floor, or organizing spools of thread. But soon, she handed Azima a needle and showed her how to stitch. Her fingers fumbled at first. The thread slipped, the fabric puckered, and her frustration showed. But Mama Tano was patient. "It's not about speed," she said. "It's about heart. Let your hands speak for your mind." Azima listened. Again and again, she practiced. Her stitches grew straighter. Her cuts became cleaner. Her eyes, once used to scanning the roads for danger, now focused on patterns and color. Days turned into weeks. The world outside went on, busy and loud. But Azima stayed in the shadows, learning quietly. She barely went outside. She didn't need to. Everything she wanted was inside that little shop. Fabric that whispered stories, machines that moved like music, and a mentor who saw her worth. Mama Tano began teaching her more than just sewing. She showed her how to mix colors, measure precisely, and match styles. She explained texture, flow, balance, all the things that made a piece come alive. Sometimes at night, when the shop was silent, Azima would sit by the window and sketch. The stars still watched her, just like before, but now she wasn't whispering wishes. She was planning. Her drawings became bolder, more detailed. She experimented with wild designs, shapes and cuts she had only imagined before. Mama Tano saw them and smiled. "You have a vision," she said. "Let's build it." Mama Tano gave Azima scraps, leftover silk, rejected lace, old buttons, and told her to make something of her own. Azima worked in silence, stitching through the night. Her hands moved with memory now, not hesitation. The next morning, she showed Mama Tano a simple dress made from patchwork fabric. Uneven, but beautiful. It wasn't perfect, but it was powerful. It carried the story of her hands, her pain, her dreams. Mama Tano looked at it and nodded. "This is your voice," she said. "Now let's teach it to sing louder." From that day, Azima became more than just a learner. She became a creator. She helped design small pieces for the shop, scarves, skirts, even embroidered handkerchiefs. Customers noticed. "Who made this?" they asked. Mama Tano only smiled. "Someone special." But Azima didn't seek the spotlight. She stayed hidden, focused on learning. She spent hours watching how the tailors worked, how Mama Tano adjusted dresses with just a few pins, how color could change mood. She started saving sketches in a box under her mattress. Dozens of ideas, each one braver than the last. The road outside still buzzed with noise, but Azima had no interest in it anymore. She was building something in the shadows, something that needed time, care, and silence. And though the world hadn't noticed her yet, she was no longer invisible. She had a place, a purpose, and a guide. In that dusty back room, surrounded by thread and fabric, Azima wasn't just surviving, she was rising. Stitch by stitch, she was forging a future the world wouldn't be able to ignore. At 16, Azima stepped into a world that once refused to see her. She wasn't wearing silk or expensive cloth. She wasn't polished like the others. She walked into the small youth design contest, wearing something no one expected, a dress made completely out of recycled trash. The skirt flowed with layers of melted wrappers. The top was stitched from torn plastic bags, and the details sparkled with soda can tabs and broken glass beads. Every piece told a story of where she came from. Her eyes didn't carry fear anymore. They carried a message. "You ignored me, but now you'll remember me." The contest hall was filled with polished young designers, their dresses shining under the lights. Azima stood out immediately. People whispered. Some laughed, some stared. But when she stepped on that stage, everything stopped. There was something raw, something electric about her. Her walk wasn't trained, but it was full of strength. Her dress rustled like a storm as she moved. She didn't smile. She didn't need to. Her work spoke louder than words. Photographers at the back began snapping pictures. The judges leaned in. There was confusion at first, then awe. Azima didn't just wear a dress. She wore her survival. Her design wasn't just fashion. It was rebellion. It was truth stitched into fabric made of what people throw away, just like how they once threw her away. In that moment, she was no longer the girl from the corners, the one people looked past. She was art. She was fire. She was unforgettable. That evening, one photo of her dress hit social media, then 10, then hundreds. The picture of the girl in a trash dress was everywhere. Who is she? People asked. What's her story? The posts spread like wildfire. People were shocked by the boldness, touched by the meaning, and inspired by the transformation. Fashion bloggers, environmental activists, and influencers reposted her image with captions like, "From nothing to powerful," and "This is real creativity." In hours, she became a symbol, not just of talent, but of rising above. Offers started coming in. Local designers wanted to meet her. A popular fashion magazine reached out for an interview. People wanted to see more of her designs. Mama Tano's little shop, once quiet and dusty, became crowded with curious visitors. But Azima didn't rush into the spotlight. She stayed close to her sewing machine, close to her roots. She thanked the ones who believed in her before the cameras arrived. She wasn't interested in fame. She was interested in telling her story through thread, texture, and style. Her dress became more than a piece of clothing. It became a symbol for everyone who had ever felt invisible. It reminded people that beauty can come from pain and strength can grow from trash. Azima's silent revolution wasn't loud. It didn't come with shouting or speeches. It came with bold design, quiet power, and a story too strong to ignore. The city that once walked past her without a glance now turned to watch. They no longer saw a beggar girl. They saw a designer with purpose. And as her image continued to spread, Azima stayed focused on her mission, to create, to speak through her work, to make sure no child like her ever felt voiceless again. Her journey was just beginning, but already she had turned the world's eyes toward a truth they had long refused to see. 2 years after the contest that changed everything, Azima did what no one expected. She launched her own brand, Azima House. It wasn't just a fashion label, it was a statement, a movement, a bold dream come true. Every piece from her collection carried her journey in its threads. She used recycled materials, old fabric, scrap metal, broken jewelry, and forgotten things people usually threw away. But under her hands, these lost items turned into powerful designs. Her fashion was bold, raw, and beautiful, just like her. Azima House quickly got attention, not just because of her story, but because her work spoke with soul. People wanted more. They wanted to wear clothes with meaning, pieces that stood for something real. Orders came in from everywhere: bloggers, models, celebrities, even fashion critics, who had once dismissed her, now praised her creativity. Magazines featured her, events invited her, and social media couldn't get enough of the girl who once begged for coins, but now built an empire with her hands. She didn't open her boutique in a fancy area. She chose the very same place where she had once sat barefoot with an empty tin. That broken path where people had ignored her cries was now home to glass doors and bold letters. Azima House. Inside the boutique, her designs hung like armor, fierce colors, wild textures, bold shapes, each one telling a story of pain, survival, and power. The shop was more than a place to buy clothes. It was a reminder that greatness can rise from forgotten corners. The same people who once rushed past her now came with resumes, asking for jobs. They stood in lines outside her shop, hoping to be part of her team. Some remembered seeing her years ago, sitting in the dust, sketching with charcoal. Now, they looked at her like a star, but Azima never changed. She treated everyone with respect, especially those who had nothing. She hired young girls who came from the same hard roads she had survived. She trained them, guided them, and gave them a chance, just like Mama Tano had done for her. Azima House became more than successful. It became powerful. Schools called her to speak. NGOs asked her to lead workshops. She didn't just design fashion. She became a voice for street children, for forgotten girls, for dreams that refused to die. Azima used her name to create space for others. She built a team that believed in creating fashion with purpose. She used eco-design not as a trend, but as a message that beauty doesn't come from money, it comes from meaning. From the cold ground to the center of fashion, Azima had walked a journey many thought impossible, but she didn't just rise. She carried others with her. Her empire stood as proof that even the roads meant to break someone can lead them to greatness if they dare to dream and fight. Years later, Azima stood in front of the same grand mansion she had once passed by, with an empty stomach and a tired heart. Back then, she had nothing but dreams and dust. Now, she had the keys. The mansion was still beautiful, still tall and proud. But this time, it belonged to the girl who once slept under open skies. Azima didn't buy it to show off or to prove a point. She didn't want revenge. She wanted change. She turned the mansion into a shelter for abandoned girls, the same way she had once been left to survive alone. The cold, silent rooms were brought to life. Walls were painted in bright colors. Broken furniture was replaced with warm beds, clean sheets, and books stacked on wooden shelves. Music filled the halls. Laughter echoed through the spaces. It wasn't just a shelter, it was a home. Azima made sure every girl who walked in felt seen and safe. She gave them food, clothes, and most of all, chances. Some girls learned how to sew, some danced, some wrote poems. Others just needed time to rest and feel human again. No one was judged for their past. They were only reminded of their future. Azima brought in kind women to care for them, women who had once been through the same darkness and had come out stronger. Every day, Azima sat in her glass office at the top floor of the mansion, looking out at the roads below. The same roads that had once ignored her now carried her name. She didn't need attention. Her happiness came from knowing other girls wouldn't have to suffer the way she did. The mansion, once a symbol of power she could never reach, now stood for hope, built by her hands. AZI House was still growing, still changing lives, but Azima's heart belonged to this shelter. Her success wasn't in magazines or awards. It was in the small, quiet victory, the girl who smiled again after months of silence, the one who stitched her first dress, the one who said thank you with tears in her eyes. These moments meant everything. The girl who once begged for help had become the woman others came to for strength. She didn't just rise from the ground, she lifted others with her. Her path had turned pain into purpose, and the roads that once broke her now carried her kindness. Azima had come full circle, not to close a chapter, but to open a door for those still waiting in the dark.